The more engaged somebody is in the workplace, the more tuned in, paying attention, thinking on their feet, critical thinking, watching, complying with policy or process, the better the product. The better they feel, the better they work with others. It isn't the woo-woo kumbaya group hug thing anymore. And it used to be at some point. What it is now is the driver of performance.
A quick interruption to remind you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, it's Ari Santiago. I am so excited for this week's episode of the Made in America podcast. I have Jay Forte from Light Metals Coloring, and I am so excited to have him on. Jay, thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. Yeah. But listen, it's the Made in America podcast, Jay. So we always start off with the same two questions. What do you make, and why do we make it?
We are a coating and anodizing and finishing company. And the best way I like to do, or to explain it to people, because most of the things we make, you would look at it and say, I have no idea what that is. In fact, there's some things on the table that I bet most people don't know what they are. But most parts need something to facilitate their working in something else. And that's a lot of what we do. So aeronautics, perfume, healthcare, guns and military, all of those have parts of things that need coatings and finishings to them. And when it does, it makes their movement with each other easier, cleaner, makes it more professional looking. So that's what we do. Why do we do it? We do it because there's a huge demand for products that don't work without the things that we do. That's the big reason for it, right?
That's the big reason, sure.
So we are not known as the most glamorous in what we do and how we do it, and we'll talk a little bit about what our process looks like. But what we can do to a product makes it a really marketable product. Again, sometimes you'll see it, sometimes you won't. So some of the things that are on the table, what it would look like. So here's what a part would look like when it comes in, and here's what we do to it. So we hard coat it.
Actually, it's funny for those of you that are listening to the audio now watching, it was actually the opposite of what you would think. So he picked up two, I don't know, what would you call those, two cylinders with sort of a like octagonal top. And one of them, that's the first one that we receive, super shiny, like looks like chrome or whatever. And then the other one you picked up almost looks like nickel plated.
Right. It looks like this is going the wrong way.
Yeah, it does look like it's going the wrong way.
So we send the wrong part back. No, the coating on this allows these parts to move beautifully with each other, not corrode. And that's a lot of the things that the shiny one's going to corrode. So it's aluminum that would corrode based on weather, environment, the heat of the product, all of these things. The coating on them then creates a component that endures, and that's really what it is.
And none of this is cosmetic, because I mean, for those that don't see, I know I like to listen to it on the audio, but there's about, I don't know, 6 or so different parts, and they're also different colors. So the one that we talked about that was sort of chrome and comes out looking more nickel. There's blue, there's bronze or gold, there's white, there's red. Sort of interesting. None of this is cosmetic. This is all functional.
So the gold ones here are the tops to perfume.
Oh, okay.
So that one,
little
yeah.
bit of
so that one
cosmetic in multiple senses, actually.
Yes, I was wondering where you're going with that. But the red ones that are on there are screws or bolts that are in a color. So when they're manufacturing the skins on airplanes, they can then say, use the red one, use the blue one, use the green one, right? So wouldn't that make the construction a whole lot easier?
It sure does.
So it's things like that facilitate the construction of something else.
Got it. That's really cool, and I love to talk about it some more. It's actually very interesting to me. Before we get to that, Jay, why don't you tell us how you got into manufacturing? Everyone seems to have a different path into the manufacturing space, and I'm curious if you could share with the audience your
path. Mine is not like anybody's. So I obviously didn't start in manufacturing. I was a financial guy to start with. I was a CPA, and stumbled into being a corporate educator. I was running a financial group, and a bigger company bought our Northeast distributor business that we were in. And they did because we had started an education department in that, and overnight our people changed. And it was because we took the time to understand what they needed so they would be successful in the workplace. So a bigger company buys the one that I'm the CFO for, and they say, hey, move to Louisiana. Okay, that was already the first challenge. I'm a guy from New England. That was a hard shift when your kids are in high school. So I said to them, instead of moving and staying in your financial group, how about if I start your education department for you? And they said yes. And in it, the biggest issue going on was, how do we put the right people in the right jobs? And how do we understand how to amplify performance since we're struggling with performance? So my financial background just set me up to learn how to teach other people. And then I shifted into helping organizations understand why people work and why they do big things or don't do big things based on work. Read things, went to seminars, became really interested in it, started writing some things, and people started publishing them. So I'm like, wow, imagine this might be my next career. And the reason why I mention that is, so I stayed with that organization for a while, then decided to actually hang out my shingle, become a coach and a speaker. And for 10 years prior to now, I was traveling around the country talking to CEO groups about people, about why they work and what work does and all of that for any kind of industry, whether it's service or whether it's manufacturing. I had built a process on how to put the right people in the right jobs, and I was speaking to a Vistage group, CEO groups, and the owners of Light Metal Colorings they were in that meeting. Jen Fleet was in that. So she engaged me to teach their organization how to put the right people in the right job. And just as that was happening, they also had a need for a financial guy or a financial person. And the serendipity of it said, well, hey, based on the human capital piece and the financial piece, which normally don't sit together in the same environment, sat together for me and just what they needed. And I was living in Florida and wanted to move back to New England. And boom, that's how it happened.
Bing, bang,
so,
boom.
Yeah. So it wasn't the manufacturing that brought me here, but it was a great opportunity to say, look, of everything that I've learned so far, manufacturing sometimes gets really shortchanged on a lot of the things, particularly when we talk around talent. That the presumption is if you can't get a job in service or you didn't go to college, then maybe you'll just end up here. And that's not at all our approach. When you take a look at these products, that requires big thinking at every level, from the person starting the process to measuring it to the engineering of it. There's huge thinking in all of this. And a lot of what we're trying to do as employers is to remind anybody, particularly manufacturers, we still want the best people. We don't want people who don't want to bring their A game to the workplace. So what is our process of figuring out who fits and why do they fit? And that's what we're trying to introduce into a manufacturing environment that historically never used it.
Did you? That's, by the way, super interesting. And you and I sort of talked pre-show about this, and I want to dig into this so much. This idea of looking for people that bring their A game. That manufacturing isn't the consolation job in any sense of the imagination, but it's like the job to have. And I want to get into that. It's pretty exciting. But have you ever brought any of these concepts to manufacturing before? Is LMC or Light Metals Coloring, is this the first kind of time where you're bringing this philosophy that you built to a manufacturing company?
Yeah, I've dabbled with others, meaning they've hired me as a consultant and they just really wanted to learn a process, then they would take it and implement it themselves. This one, we are taking it and day by day we are living it. So nothing tests the edge of your process more than the day-to-day, and we're finding that we land beautifully on our feet with it. So I'm happy about it. There are some things about manufacturing that we are adding to the process that we had not thought about until the day-to-day of it shows up. And
what's kind of cool about the process thing in manufacturing is that, unlike, say, in the service business where it's often lip service given to process, but it's really more haphazard, manufacturing requires process. It requires fidelity to how you get things done because you can't fake it. At the end, the part either comes out right or it comes out wrong. And so that must be really interesting. But I wanted to take one step back on something you said, which I find really fascinating. You went from finance to people. And for many people out here who have worked with finance people before, their fidelity to people doesn't seem to, the sort of, you look at the disc profile, high eyes don't usually end up in finance, very usually process oriented, detail focused, what's the old stereotype? It's like, don't talk to me, send me numbers, right? But somehow that wasn't you. So I'm just curious about the sort of that evolution and were you always a people person that sort of ended up in finance? I mean, did you feel like a fish out of water there? I mean, how did that all?
So kind of yes to all of that. So sometimes your parents, though loving and caring, may guide you in something that doesn't always serve you. So I remember once my folks had said, gee, your room is so neat and organized, you should probably be an accountant. And I was. And then I realized I'm not here on the planet to tick and tie numbers all day. I did insist.
Not that there's anything wrong with ticking and tying numbers.
Well, let me support that, all right?
Yeah,
so I did insist that my 3 daughters, when they went to college, you all have to take an accounting course. You must be able to talk your performance through a P&L and know the difference between a P&L account and a balance sheet. One of the best things I ever did, to have the people background and the financial background, because the people are performance. That's why it's called human capital. What are these people doing and how are we measuring it? Not just what did you make, but how did you act and feel and all of those things which have historically been out of the conversation. But people don't do it just for the money. We know that. Out of 10 things, pay is number 6.
100%.
So alignment, purpose, valuable work, sense of inclusion matter. And they matter in a manufacturing environment, and they matter in a service environment.
Yeah, we had an episode on recently where one of the people that was on the episode, Doug Johnson, was saying how he was at a position before the current manufacturer that he owns. He was running another business and didn't like the way it was going, so he quit. They called him back and said, what would it take? He said, if you double my salary. And they did it. And so what did he find out? That getting paid twice as much didn't make him any happier.
Nope.
And it didn't last. And it's just so funny that you just sort of connected that, right? That we perceive this concept that getting paid more or whatever is going to make us happier, and there really isn't a connection there.
It's a lot of what I said at the beginning or earlier too, that it seems kind of odd that the financial side and the human capital side go together. But when you say the word capital, already we're in the financial arena, and everything is about performance. It is performance to a customer, performance on the line, the following of procedure. It's all performance. There's metrics all day long. And it isn't to replace the person with a metric. And that's one thing we're working hard at LMC not to do. I don't want to see you as your production. I don't want to see you as the errors that you had in a particular process. I want to see you as a person who has the right skills, is properly aligned, understands what we do and why we do it. The conversations we try and have, this is new, and we're figuring out how to do it, is around the word experience. What is the customer experience? What is the employee experience? And we always ask the people there, so which one matters more? And the default is customer. No, it's employee. If I haven't won you in to why we do what we do for these and care deeply enough about what it is that we make and where that goes, so the next time you're sitting on a plane, if you could take the inside of the plane off, you should see those colored things in there to know that the right screw is holding the right panel on, and you should feel secure that you're on a plane. It's not going to implode.
Which we're not recomming that you start disassembling the plane that you're on, by the way. I don't think that's, but point taken, right? Yeah.
But so the understanding that you're here to do big work, and big work isn't production. Big work is on yourself. Big work is, what do you learn about others? How do you learn to be on a team? That's the big work of it. And all of it comes together in the manufacture of a product. We have to have a variety of departments, things coming in from outside with subcontract, and we do part of it, and we send it out, it comes back. Everybody's got to work on that together so we can deliver something remarkable at the end. There's a lot of soft skill going on in that, besides the hard skills on using the machines and the process and the tanks. You still have to know, how do I talk to somebody? What does it mean to be professional? How do I manage myself? How do I think critically if this isn't working? How do I not just yank it, but stop for a minute, understand it, and do something with intention? And those are things that historically have not been shared in a manufacturing environment.
Does this all link back to purpose, Jay? Are we talking about you're sort of talking about the big picture. Let me actually take a full step back. So you're coming into manufacturing, Jen and Richard, the owners of Light Metals, they're talking to you. They want you to come in. They saw you at Vistage. So you come in and you're looking at this manufacturing business and you're saying, hey, I want to try and bring this, I don't know how to describe it, but is it sort of a purposeful approach to growing our people? Is that a good way to say it?
I like to use the word humanity.
Okay.
I like to say, how do we help people? In fact, the real reason why LMC, short of the Vistage thing happened, is that the vision for LMC is not a conventional vision for a manufacturer. Manufacturers say, you know, our job is to make top quality products for whatever.
XYZ, sure, yeah.
Theirs is, the purpose of our work is to help people rise to their potential. So the whole purpose of our business isn't the stuff. The whole purpose of our business is our people. Those great people will do amazing things, absolutely. That means our focus has to be on the person more than on the process. And historically, the organization is all about how much we get out the door, how much we get out the door. And we have come to the realization that you can't say you're all about the people and then push for product out the door. You have to realign them. And these are some of the hard lessons of trying to be in a world that, you know, you got to pay the bills and you've got to do all that stuff. And you still have to help people feel like this matters. And COVID did a perfect job of helping us understand the value of inclusion. And the value of feeling important, and all of the things that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, as we missed things and many places started to work at home, and one of the things they realized is, I don't feel like I'm included in anything anymore. Well, we were a critical business, so we stayed open. That didn't mean we understood the message on helping people feel valuable and included. We just like, well, get the product out, get the product out. And I think our biggest awareness, like growing up, in this, the awareness we have is, whoa, we really do believe this, and that means some of the things that we're doing have to change.
So just really quickly, do you want to give a Maslow's hierarchy primer for anyone that doesn't know what that is, since we referenced it?
Sure.
Go ahead. Do you want to give the primer? Well, anyway, Maslow's hierarchy is just sort of starting with, you know, what are the basic needs, right? Food, shelter, and so on. And so, you know, people aren't going to think about how to be, you know, existentially great at work if they're starving. So you kind of got to build up from the bottom. So anyway, that's the quick, I think that's a good quick and dirty.
Yeah, that's fine. In fact, the neat correlation is engagement, the term engagement, the ability for employees to volunteer to bring their A game to work, engagement, is now directly correlates with Maslow's 5 pieces. As you climb the Maslow's triangle or Maslow's pyramid, the top one is engagement. What does it take to be or to bring your biggest level? Well, if you're worried about any of the other ones, your brain isn't on work, whether you're talking about process or service. So as an organization understands what is our job in today's workplace to help you not be distracted by these other things that the world has thrown in your face, and you bring it to the workplace, now we have to help give you a solution to things that we never thought we had to do before, like safety, security, inclusion, awareness of others. I'm trying to remember all of Maslow's things. But up to the achievement of it, these are distractions, and it's my job and it's our job as leaders in this company to rule out or to limit the distractions.
So so let's kind of dig a little bit. What do you say to people who are like, geez, Jay, this all sounds great, but you know, like we're not building a commune here.
Yeah,
we're exactly. We gave up singing Kumbaya, you know, in the 70s because we realized we actually got to, you know, make something into some products and have some money because nothing, the rest of this isn't going to matter. Talk about Maslow's hierarchy. This business doesn't exist if we can't pay the rent. So, so this all sounds great, but how does this actually help my business? I mean, how did LMC get there? How do you get there in your head? And maybe most importantly, if someone in the audience is like, Jay, this sounds great, but please, what do you say to that?
Yeah, make it practical. And this is where I like the human capital and the finance piece back, right? So the more engaged somebody is in the workplace, the more tuned in, paying attention, thinking on their feet, critical thinking, watching, complying with policy or process, the better the product. The better they feel, the better they work with others. It isn't the woo-woo kumbaya group hug thing anymore, and it used to be at some point. What it is now is the driver of performance. Today, you have to both be good at what a job does and like doing it. Right? So
Fair.
Even though many manufacturers are still behind machines, if they're not interested in doing it and don't have the aptitude or interest in being better at it, then all we do is struggle to get the bare minimum out of it. So it has shifted, it has changed dramatically the way leaders and managers need to think about how do you engage your people. And why is the word engagement so important? And there are so many things you could do. One of the things we always recommend is figure out where your engagement level is. So the Gallup organizations throws out their Q12, the 12 questions that when you answer positive or favorably to them, your organization's pretty engaged. In other words, they're thinking on their feet, they're working with each other, they're amping up their performance. That's what they're doing. And we don't have to mandate, get this done. Now we create an environment that allows it to happen, and they go and do it. Because they feel valued, they feel secure, they feel included, they feel like they make a difference. So you can mandate, and all you'll do is, when anybody tells you what to do, most of us put our shield up and defend our, I'm going, or you can't make me do that. I've got kids, so I know what that's like. So, but if I instead invite you into being part of this bigger vision, and provide an environment that says, this is who we are and this is why we do it, and you're part of it, I make huge inroads from a performance standpoint. And that's the reason why I think LMC's onto something big. We have not nailed it down yet, absolutely not. But every day we are getting closer because I think our belief system has changed. And that would be the big message I'd share to everyone, that you can't tell people you care, you have to show people you care. And the way that you do that isn't by buying them lunch every now and then. It's by understanding them as people. So we are amping up our one-on-ones. Production people, when do they ever get a one-on-one? Well, shouldn't they get a weekly one-on-one? Where are you headed? What do you need? Where are your skills? How do we help? We had an outsourced HR department for the last 10 years in the place. One of the first things we did is we brought HR in. You need to have somebody who's an advocate, an ally, and someone you can go to if you're not quite sure on how to navigate and have a performance issue or want to work on being better. And all of that was out of touch. And if it's out of touch, why would anybody reach or bring their A game and say, I really want that?
I mean, we'll circle back to LMC, but just this concept of this approach you're talking about. In the time that you've been doing it, when you were kind of doing your own thing for a while, does it work everywhere? Does it work anytime? Like, I'm trying to think of people that are listening and being like, well, this is interesting. I'm not really sure that it works here or that I fully believe in it. And I mean, have you seen it sort of return the promise in the end? And where does it start? I'm asking like 17 questions at once, but maybe I'll just ask this one. Have you seen it work over the long haul to return the promise that you're making here, or the return the results you're theorizing would happen if someone took it to the logical conclusion?
Yeah, I'll share that and then where the obstacle happens when it's tried. Yes, it does, so long as, and here's the obstacle, that you give it enough time because it's a culture change. It's a mindset shift. And particularly in a manufacturing environment, it's a mindset shift that employees are not what they make. Service environments, they're much more tuned into that. You're not just what you deliver because you create relationships in a service environment.
Yeah,
you don't have those relationships in a manufacturing one. So understanding the shift of mindset has to be in leadership way before it can be on the people side. And on the people have to see it in the way leaders then interact with them. How many times, the question I throw to anybody listening, do you make an attempt at saying good morning to everybody and know something about everybody on your team? And what is the latest thing that's going on with that? That's the other reason why I like Maslow. The COVID reminded us to check with our people to make sure they had everything at the bottom level of, the physiological
safety,
and the safety,
health, food. Yeah.
Yep. Because if you're missing anything, toilet paper, Purell, remember that? Everybody was so distracted because they couldn't find any paper product or were so afraid of the lack of, Purell and things.
Or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so what it did was it created this big conversation around it, so everybody's biggest brain power was spent on what I didn't have instead of what I need to make. So then seeing leaders get upset at them for that says, you don't really understand what's going on with people. So now we're back to the people and the numbers, right? So the people create the numbers. So what mindset does a leader have to have in order to encourage their people to make the numbers? The moment you mandate it, the moment they fight with you. But if you share numbers, share skills, if you do a really good job up front of putting them in a job that needs where their brain goes, then most of the time they feel successful. If you put them in a job where the thinking goes this way, but the job's thinking goes this way, all day long they struggle, and then you get mad at them on why they're not handling. So you need them in a detail-oriented, focused type thing. That's not who they're really social. Well, yeah, they got all friends entirely going on, and they're the first one for your picnic committee and everything else, but they can't make the same product done right twice. Well, is that their problem or is that your problem? Depends on what you said, who fits, and this whole concept of why do I put you in a job? What do I want from you, and how do I help you be your best?
So there's some component here of understanding that not everybody's right for every role, right? So you got to figure that out. So let me ask a very specific question. What do you do when you find out you put, Jane in charge of inspection, and it turns out she's a high I, right, in the disc profile, right? She's a people person, not a detail person. Mm-hmm. Now what?
So you have a couple of options. One, has she learned to endure? Maybe there's no replacement for her and you have to find some way. But I bet you'll have to manage or coach her differently. Now that you know that, there's no reason why the interactions would look like before. You have new information. The most likely thing would be, I bet there's a big performance issue all the time, but now you've named it. And once you've named it, you have two choices. Do I want to deal with it because I have a shortage and I don't know how to replace this? Versus where else in my organization would you get a chance to shine? We just had this with one of our employees who just struggled all day long doing what she says she loved. Well, if that were the case, we wouldn't have all these errors, would we? So what we need to do is help you find something that you know would make you smile instead of like this all day long. And if you're afraid of not having a job, we said, don't worry. We will help you find another job if here we can't find one for you. But where you are now, the results aren't where they need to be, and you're not happy. So which leads here? I think it's the you not happy is creating the results not happening. So let's talk about what does fit you, and do we have it? And if not, we'll look through today's world and find you a place that fits you. That's how we take care of our people. But this one where you're in now, you struggle with it.
Do you think that performance, and I struggle with even using that word, but if the outcomes aren't the outcomes that we would want, is that sort of a early warning sign that, or maybe not early, a warning sign, a giant red flag, a blinking neon light that we've got a mismatch?
Well, I think that's why I like that Gallup Q12 and a few other things. So if you're checking in with your people all the time, if you're not watching for effort, mood, attitude, then you're not seeing someone who's excited to be there. You do not have to dance in the streets every day. But if every day you sound like, God, I can't wait till it's Friday, I bet there's a mismatch going on here because something we're doing doesn't fit in your definition of what's purposeful for you.
So then I think one of the things that comes up a lot when I have these types of conversations with people, right? Because there's healthy, natural tension often with finance between this idea of, sort of like culture and being about people and getting results. And some people think they don't go together and whatever. So we can get through that. But I wonder, and maybe we just talked about it, but, where do you view accountability in the context of this framework? And I want you to frame the answer up in two ways. Okay. One is accountability to the results we need as a team, right? Because we're trying to produce something, and whatever your role is, we're trying to do that. And it's our part of the team, right? So everyone else is relying on us doing our part, or the team can't perform, and it's going to hurt everybody. So there's accountability to results that we've got to worry about. And the other part of accountability that I wonder is, what's the accountability on the employee or the teammate themselves to be a part of this process, as opposed to just saying, well, the company says they're all about the people, so let them figure it out, right? It should be done for me. So talk to me about those two accountabilities.
Yeah, I like to say, is it me or is it you?
Is it me or is it
me, the company? Have I created the environment? Am I have unreasonable expectations of you? Have I done my work up front by saying, what would it take for someone to be successful in the job? That's how we start. We create what we call a performance profile. Performance profile says, here's the environment in which our jobs work. Here's specifically what this job does, and here are the attributes of someone who would do it well. We know what we're looking for. Why? Because we know what it has to get done, and we know the environment in which that job works. So shame on us if we put somebody in a job that doesn't meet that criteria. So going into it, that's us. So if I've done that well, screened you well, interviewed you well, set a clear set of expectations, meet with you on a regular basis. So, okay, we've done my piece, and I've got a lot of pieces to do. I still get to say, is it you? If I've done all my piece and it's still not happening, now I'm a little bit more inclined to think it's you and not me. If I haven't done all these things, I get it. You know, I owe you that. In today's workplace, it is about fit. We think our way through the day. Even in a production when we're following a process, I still have to think 99% of the day just doesn't go exactly as I'd like it. So the me that's there in this moment has to be aware enough to say, okay, that shifted this way, what do I want to do? But I've got to be mindful or present enough. And if I don't like this or the things that the company owes me, a great workplace, clear set of expectations, reasonable pay, all of that stuff, if that's not in place, it's busy spinning. And if it's spinning, the rest of this big executive function brain is caught up in feeling like I've been wronged or...
Well, it goes back to the hierarchy, right? If I'm busy worried about the fact that I'm not getting paid enough or whatever. So let me dig in on that a little bit more. So two components on that. One is, and this is something I've seen in my personal career. I read and have heard a long time ago that, great leaders look in the mirror and poor leaders look out the window, meaning something goes wrong, great leaders look in the mirror and say, what could I have done better? Bad leaders look out the window and look for who could have done something better to make this go better. And I think one of the challenges for those of us that believe in that philosophy and look in the mirror is that there's always something we could have done better. The is it me or is it you? I've never been perfect as a leader in, if I'm paying the right amount, then maybe I'm not spending enough one-on-one time, or if I'm spending enough one-on-one time and I'm paying the right amount, but I'm not asking the right questions, or I've been distracted because of my own personal stuff. And I missed the fact that, Jay's kind of out of sorts and I didn't, so I think we're never at perfect, right? I always say that the Goldilocks zone, right? The not too hot, not too cold, the just right, isn't a zone we ever live in. We pass through it on the way.
We don't move in.
That's right.
Yeah.
We visit on the way to too much or too little. Yeah. And so how do you coach, educate, advise people to know when they've done enough, even though it won't be perfect?
I think the critical word here is coach. And that's why I like this weird, circuitous route that it took for me to be here at this moment. As a coach, one of the biggest things I can help leadership with is learning how to look first in before you look out. Mm-hmm. So we've done a lot of work at Light Metals Coloring on self-discovery and self-awareness so that we can be self-regulated, which is where I think the big problem is. So the ability to say, do I in fact know in this moment, am I coming across in a way that's supportive? Or has whatever's just happened triggered me and now I'm just reacting? So if I could see me in that, two things. One, I get that I'm not going to be perfect in this stuff all the time, but at least I'm watching for the things that historically would trigger me. I'm managing those. And already the relationship happens. Nobody wants to be in a relationship with a nut. So the relationship, if I can manage me enough when things work or don't work, I'm starting to build rapport, and that creates deposits in my bank account, right? So for the times when I do overreact, the person on the other side says, yeah, everybody would do that. So one, I think, is that. I think there's a big requirement that we start, I have this argument with Simon Sinek, not start with why, it's start with who. You start with who you are, because that who stands at this moment and determines how you're going to be in this moment. With this situation, with that person, it's improv, total improv. All you get is this moment with this situation and that person. What do you want to do? And a self-aware, self-regulated person will see the opportunity in the moment versus react to it. So there's hard work that leaders have to do in order to be in this kind of workplace. The other part of that is, I know I'm not going to be there all at once, but I'm always working a plan. I'm always working a plan. So call it a PIP, a performance improvement plan, or just the fact that I'm working on being the best version of myself, which is why I like our mission. We didn't say be there. We said aspire to be there. Go work towards your potential. How do we help you do that? And it's not just you, it's me too. So I have to figure out that on a daily basis, I have some work to do on me first so that I'm ready to help others do that work. And one of the big things we're doing at Light Metals is every week we have a leadership program. I'm teaching it, and so I'm trying to get all the pieces in. And we spent 10 weeks on self-awareness. This is a team that doesn't or didn't always know how to work with each other, didn't know how to manage our own emotions when somebody triggers you. Why are you going to lose your cool? We have a problem to solve, and that brain's not going to solve it. That brain's just busy venting. We need a solving brain. How do you manage that? What do you need to do? What are your tools? Go back to those. So I'm working on that for me. All leaders are working on that for them so that they realize it isn't about perfection, that we are all a work in process. But could we see it and respect that in each other, that you're working a plan and so am I? And the moment I do that, even with the people on the line, we already have a different relationship.
But it's not, so it sounds like the fundamental, the bedrock upon which this is all built is a mutual agreement and understanding that we both have a responsibility to ourselves and to each other. Because the question sort of started on how does the leader know, on accountability, how does the leader know when they've done enough, even though it's never perfect,
right,
so that they can hold the other person accountable. And I think where you got to there with that, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, but confirming that it sounds like what you're saying is we both have to agree to it. Ergo, we can only have people working in the environment who are willing to be held accountable, hold others accountable, and be responsible to themselves.
Right. So isn't that part of when you start to create your profile is what attributes do I need? Do I have someone who...
Ergo, start with the who, not with the why.
There we go. So.
Not to cut you off, but yeah.
So in my head, and I think a word that's maybe come up a lot already today is mindset. And if we're going to be different in a world that keeps changing, needs us to be agile and adaptable, we have to be comfortable shifting the way we look at things, which means we have to be really good at looking at things. Most of us don't see enough in order to kind of take inventory of what is to ask ourselves the question, so what do I do with what is? Is this issue a performance issue, a process issue, a misalignment issue? Is it a leader issue? I don't know. You've got to slow down for a minute in order to see it, to name it, to then start to build a plan to change it.
What do you say to people? Because I hear people in the back of my mind being like, gosh, Jay, man, I just want to anodize some parts. Like, what's going on? How do you address that?
You want them done right the first time, right?
Ideally.
So I can't just say, follow this, because I know there's too many components, even in a really rigid process. There's tolerances, and we have to be on. So I need those people to want to do it. And now I'm back to what do I have to do? Who do I have to be in order to encourage them to show up to that part at this moment so that I can deliver it when I said I'd deliver it.
So your answer would be, that's great. You want to anodize as many parts as possible. Well, in order to do that, you're going to have good quality. You're going to want to have as few defects as possible, et cetera, et cetera. And then the way to get there is by engaging people in their executive brain. And the only way we're going to get to that is through this whole process.
Right. You see, we had to go and go and go. So we were trying to find in this whole thing, where's the true tipping point in this? Where is that thing, that least common denominator, that if you found that and you affected that, which I think is in the mindset of a leader, the way you look at people, the way you look at product, the way you look at things changes how every step from that point happens. Who belongs here? What do we really believe? What do we really make? What does a customer really want? It's the ability to be present enough to asking the questions, but in most leader issues, the issue is press for performance. Just get the numbers.
Yeah, get the numbers.
So the slow it down enough to say, how do I get numbers is the important one. And it's through people, even in manufacturing.
So for people that don't have a Jay Forte in their business, right? But they're listening to this and they're saying to themselves, this makes so much sense, Jay. Like, okay, where do I start? How do I even get this concept off the ground?
There are really great resources on developing self-awareness. That would be the first thing. Just spend a little time asking yourself, who am I? What am I really good at? I have a friend who says, you should always know two things. What do you rock at and what do you stink at? and if you had that, you have what we call our inventory of abilities. We started a 2-page summary of the things that you should know about yourself because they're going to indicate to you how you do things. It'd be really good to know what that is so you could then manage the things that need managing, which is all of it. Yeah, we have one other line, then I'll give you some other resources. Strengths and liabilities, we don't say weaknesses, and that's not because we think everybody deserves a trophy. It's the other side of a strength is truly a liability. If I'm really direct and assertive, I bet by nature I'm not empathetic and supportive. By nature. I can sometimes get there, but it takes work. That's what a liability is.
I'll also add one other point, which
Yeah.
I like about strengths and liabilities, and I'm going to give you this to tie this back to your finance background, is that it's sort of like debits and credits.
Yeah.
And many of the strengths have an offsetting liability.
Yeah.
For example, and we talked about this before, when you're a highly detail-oriented person, it could be viewed as a strength. Generally, the offsetting liability is the fact that you're not bubbly and going around talking to everybody. Because if you were bubbly going around talking to everybody, you wouldn't be focused on the
Right.
details. And so when you say strengths and weaknesses, it sort of implies, well, if I work on my weaknesses, they can become strengths. The problem is if you try to improve the weaknesses, they generally reduce the strength of the strength. So that's where the...
So here's the metaphor that I like using, that a strength and a liability shouldn't be on an on-off switch. It should be on a dimmer. Sometimes I need to roll it up and sometimes I roll it down. So if I'm really direct with this person, if I could be aware enough that this person needs me to be empathetic, could I know me to know that I'm not that normally, but for now I need to be, then this interaction completely changed and that product got made. But if I did what I always do, then I would be fighting with something.
It's that golden rule, platinum rule thing, right? Like the golden rule sounds so great. Treat other people the way you want to be treated, except for when that person doesn't want to be treated the way you want to be treated. You're actually going backwards. So that's super smart.
So to me, the starting point in all of this, there was a couple of things. The whole idea of understanding job alignment. So the Gallup organization's done some really great things. Marcus Buckingham in particular was the one who'd written a lot of books around the concept of hiring for fit. So that's one to go with right away. The Gallup Q12, the 12 questions that help you stay comfortable knowing the kinds of things that move employees to bring their A game or not. Here are 12 questions adequately tested, so go with those. Anything on self-awareness, self-discovery, it may sound like it's the old, like we were talking about mindfulness is not necessarily about meditation. It is totally about tuning in and paying attention. And if you could pay attention on the outside, you'd see people differently. But if you could pay attention on the inside, you'd notice things about you that you had not put together yet. Like, I'm really good at this, or I'm not really good at this, or that really triggers me, or I'm really passionate about that. So to do that hard work, most of the resources that are out there, just go to John Kabat-Zinn, who's a great mindfulness guy. He does a lot on understanding how to pay attention on the inside so that that person can then be called on to be more successful and intentional on the outside.
Listen, for people that are listening to this while driving, walking, running, biking, I'm gonna get Jay locked down after this. We're gonna create a little reference guide sheet, and I'll get the team to publish that.
We have put together a lot. So when I was in my consulting business, we put together whole programs on this. I am glad to make some of our worksheets available. If you want to do our inventory of abilities, 2 pages, and a sheet of questions that prompt you on how do you figure this out, that's a great starting point. It's a really good starting point. We put everybody in our company through it. You can't work here if you don't know who you are, because that you is going to interact with that person, and if both of you don't know, that's the reason why that product didn't get made.
Yeah, so much good stuff here, Jay. And we're like kind of running out of time, but I just got a few more things I want to try and get through. So as we're doing this stuff, right? And for the people out there that are going, all right, well, what's the ROI? When should I expect to see tangible results when I'm on this journey? Is this one of those like kind of deals where it's like, if you build it, they will come, and it's going to take me like 5 years to build it. So it's invest, invest, invest. Hopefully I get to reap something down the line, or is it incremental? Do I see benefits on the journey?
It's truly a little bit of both. The way to think about people is not expense, but investment. What do you want to spend so that's the part I like about it. So that if I do this, then this will happen. So if I have these culture initiatives, if I have modifications to workplace, so that what happens? So we test them as we do them, and at the running a period of them, then we run through the world's cheapest and best management tool ever. Blank piece of paper, line drawn down the middle, left-hand side, what worked, right-hand side, what didn't work. And now I have an inventory, not a judgmental one. It wasn't good or bad or right or wrong. It just either delivered or didn't deliver. So when I spent that, did it deliver? Yes, keep it going. No, go back to your list and come up with something else. The only way from a people standpoint, we had the same thing when I was education director, return on education. We know it makes a difference, but to quantify that is really hard. We look for incremental changes in employee attitude and in performance. That is the culmination of programs. I wish there were one statistic. You can get an engagement stat when you use the Gallup Q12, engage the Gallup organization, or lots of others do engagement initiatives, surveys, SurveyMonkey, we can do all this.
Tiny polls, yeah.
Yep. You can create a metric for it. The best way is to watch the change in people. Turnover, attendance, conversations in one-to-ones. They're not all about money anymore. They're about purpose. They're about difference. Participation on employee committees, not just for the fun things of employees, but incremental improvements to a particular customer or a process. And employees want to be on that. Now you're seeing some of the things that you've spent money on showing up.
That's really that's really exciting. And I mean, why do you think? You sort of circling back to getting into manufacturing, and you sort of saying you haven't seen this in manufacturing before, and you had talked about way in the beginning of this conversation about in manufacturing. I think you even said even in manufacturing you need to engage your big brain, your executive function. Why do you think there's a stigma that isn't the case? Because it seems to me that it is the case. It's always been the case, but somehow that's not sort of in the zeitgeist. What's your thoughts on that, and what do we do to change that?
Yeah, I think it's that, when you shift from high school to college, the college people are working in professional jobs, and manufacturing, unless you're in leadership in manufacturing, wasn't ever perceived that way. We were having a conversation earlier today, too. If you know yourself, here again is the defense for mindfulness. If you know yourself and you know that by nature you're really mechanically inclined. So 6 kids in my family, 5 of us overly academic, absolutely. 1, not. Just he was he's an artsy guy who has a scenic photography business, and he's remarkable at it, that he didn't need college. And what he did was just realize that it was up to him to create his own path. I think we have identified the college route as the route instead of asking the all-important question of junior high kids and high school kids. So what moves you? Mm-hmm. When you're thrilled and excited, what could that be? And I had a friend who could look at any engine and take it apart in a minute. Just his brain just worked that way. And he is a mechanic. He's a mechanic by choice, rather than I didn't go to college, so I have to take one of these jobs. So how do we get around?
Kind of goes back to your starting with who question, right?
Exactly.
It's like, who are you and what really moves you? And I think goes back to, this is a topic I am so unbelievably passionate about. And I think, we are so much happier. We generally achieve more, and achievements usually measured by impact, right? When I talk to people who have been quote unquote successful and you ask them, what do they think about? It's rarely the trophies. It's rarely the money. It's rarely the awards. It's rarely the buildings. It's always about the lives that were impacted. Yep. And seems to me we always impact people more in a more profound and a deeper way when we're doing something that moves us.
That, I think, is the reason why the LMC environment or the LMC opportunity at this exact serendipitous moment in my own career made such great sense. Because here was an organization that historically manufacturers have not made a general purpose statement that their purpose of their business is to raise the potential of their people. But herein, I think, is the secret to this whole thing. That really talented people are everywhere. All we need to do is say, here's what I've got. Does this align to you? And that's why our performance profiles are really clear. When we go out to the world, we say, this is what this does, and here are the attributes of somebody who think this is cool. Is that you? Then come talk to us. If it's not, save us. You know, save you,
save
and
you,
save us.
save us, right.
Yeah, you won't like it. It's just okay. It's not for you. But it could be that you've been to college and this is still your thing. It could be that you didn't go to college and this is your thing. That we do really big work for really important things. And in the process, if doing things with your hands is a real driver for you and you also want to be the biggest and best version of you, that's who we are. That's what we decided to go out to the world with. And that's what I know this leadership really believes deeply in.
Jay, that is awesome. I'm gonna leave it there. We're gonna go to rapid fire round of questions. It's been a really awesome conversation. I look forward to it continuing. I know we had sort of talked offline about continuing the conversation and welcoming people into it, and we're gonna make that happen. So when this gets released and we do it, let's see if we can get some other folks who are like-minded and sort of create an ongoing conversation where we encourage each other to live this dream more and more and help ourselves achieve more, help the people around us achieve more, and help our companies do better things. I think that'll be really cool.
Yeah, terrific.
All right, man, you ready for some rapid fire round of questions? Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox.
That's it. It's Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks?
Starbucks.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Oh, staycation.
Do you have a favorite business book?
Yes, The Art of Achievement, Tom Morris.
Oh, that's a new one for me. I have to get that on.
He's a great, yeah.
Art of Achievement, Tom Morris.
Art of Achievement, Tom Morris.
All right, I'm going to get that. Nice. If you had to do something other than being the director of finance and human capital at Light Metals Coloring, and it could be anything, what would you do?
I'd be a chef.
A chef? What kind of cuisine?
Italian. Had to be.
Of course, of course. What's something, Jay, that you learned early in your career or early in your life that you think's helped propel you to all the great success that you've had?
The world will try and tell you who to be. The moment you decide that that's yours to call, that's the time that you get to live your own life.
Oh, that's good. What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell young Jay, and if he'd listen to you, you think it'd really propel him forward?
Don't be an accountant. That was not my favorite. I'm glad I've had the background, but what I suffered through before I figured out that for me, life is all about the interactions with people and how many years I spent ticking and tying numbers instead of connecting with people and being a coach and doing all that younger Jay would have benefited from that.
Well, you certainly found your calling now, Jay. That's for sure. The passion is clear, and I'm sure it's coming through. Thanks again so much for coming on. It's been really fun talking to you.
Entirely my pleasure. Thank you, Ari.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. You know, my goal is to help build a community where we can learn and grow together. Your input, feedback, and engagement is critical to making that happen. Please do comment, like, and subscribe so more and more people can hear what we're doing and join our community of growth and success. Thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you again soon.